Today, I realized that progressives and liberals hate Donald Trump more than they hate seeing people of color die. And I realized during Trump's presidency, liberals and progressives were protesting every goddamn week. You guys remember that? The Women's March was massive, and they protested against the Muslim ban, and it was the first time Muslims in America felt really seen, right? And then we had the Black Lives Matter movement protests where they marched with us in solidarity. And I started thinking about how in 2021, when Joe Biden had his very chaotic exit out of Afghanistan, and we watched videos in horror of Afghani people trying to flee the country. We saw people flying off planes, people handing their children off to U.S. soldiers. I mean, Joe Biden had no remorse, he had none. And what he then did, as if that wasn't worse, when Taliban took over, he decided to freeze Afghanistan's assets. And this caused massive famine throughout the country. I mean, doctors and teachers could not get their check from the government. They couldn't feed their families. I mean, no U.S. media was even reporting this. It was only Al Jazeera that was reporting it. And they didn't want to report it because it was an embarrassment. It was a failed war. And then, if that wasn't worse, Joe Biden then decides to freeze their assets, but then he decides to give half of Afghanistan's assets to 9/11 victims, the families of 9/11 victims. So essentially, Afghanistan ended up paying for a war that they never started. None of those 9/11 bombers were from Afghanistan. They were from Saudi Arabia. Osama bin Laden wasn't from Afghanistan. He was from Saudi Arabia. And he wasn't even found in Afghanistan. He was found in Pakistan. And did progressives and liberals protest? No, not at all. They didn't care. They just didn't care. But could you imagine if Trump did what Biden did to Afghani people? They would have hung him. The media would have hung him. The celebrities would have hung him. The liberals and progressives would have hung him. So what is it about Trump that liberals and progressives hate the most? It's that he exposes them. He exposes Obama. He exposes Biden. He exposes Hillary Clinton. He exposes Nancy Pelosi. Yes, we know who Trump is. We know he's a racist, but we know where we stand with him. And he's just trying to tell us that, hey, these people that you think are the good guys are doing fucked up shit too. So if you're going to hate me, you should hate them too. And people are like, no, they want to vote for the people who are pretenders. Obama is the biggest pretender of them all. He is the biggest puppet. Obama launched airstrikes and military raids in 7 countries during his presidency. He's committed more war crimes than Trump has, especially in the Middle East. He's killed millions and millions of civilians in the Middle East. He's never been held accountable for his war crimes. Wall Street Journal came out with an article this year where they said that Trump's best foreign policy was not starting any wars. Like, he was anti-war. He wasn't a warmonger. And so because he wasn't a warmonger, he wasn't killing innocent people. We have to recognize that the videos we are seeing come out of Gaza was probably 10 times that during Obama's presidency. We just didn't see it. People like that were dying. Arabs in the Middle East were dying just like that in the Middle East during Obama's presidency. We just weren't watching it. When Trump infamously debated Hillary Clinton, and she tried to press him about his taxes, and he turned around and said, why don't you just change the tax codes then? But you won't change the tax codes because you and your little friends benefit off of it. When Nancy Pelosi, Mrs. 100 Millionaire, was asked whether lawmakers and their spouses should be prohibited from trading stocks while they are serving in Congress because they're privy to information about the stocks, about businesses, she said no. Nancy Pelosi is the most shadiest bitch in all of Congress. And she pretends, she hides behind her liberal values, but it's a front. And right now, all of these people I mentioned, Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi, Obama, they're not calling for a ceasefire. They want to see more Arabs be killed, more Muslims be killed. They don't care. They don't care about our lives. So stop telling us that we need to vote for Biden. He is not the lesser of two evils right now. The entire Democratic Party is fucking the same. At least we know where we stand with someone like Trump.
Just made a video talking about how I was going to vote for Donald Trump because out of the options, he's the only one that was against the wars and for peace, and that, he ran on ending the Ukraine war, and he ran on pulling us out of the Middle East and divesting all those investments in NATO and everything else. And I guess I've been living under a rock because all I've been concerned with is what's going on in Palestine. But it's pretty irrefutable in his latest campaigns that we don't have a choice. And it sucks because it seems like every election cycle, no matter what, we just really don't have a choice. The American people never have anybody they can choose. The powers that be always manage to corrupt and flood every single candidate cycle. It just never, ever will work out. Jimmy Dore, I don't know if you guys know who Jimmy Dore is, got a great show on YouTube, and I used to watch him all the time. I just kind of stopped watching because I've been obsessed with TikTok. But this is a great show, so if you have a minute to check it out.
If you thought that Donald Trump was going to be the savior to stop World War III, watch this.
When I'm back in the White House, the United States will stand with Israel all the way, 100%, without hesitation, without qualification, and without any apology. We're not going to be apologizing. We won't be apologizing. We're not going to be apologizing.
Apologize.
We will fully support the Israelis in their mission to ensure that Hamas is decimated and these atrocities will be avenged. They will be avenged. In many ways, they'll be avenged.
Yeah.
I think even beyond what you're thinking about. The wars have to be finished oftentimes before the peace. And if you don't do the wars, the peace doesn't happen. And if you're not going to be tough and ruthless like they are, it's not going to happen. We have to stop it. We have to end it once and for all. After decades of broken promises by past leaders, I kept my promise, recognized Israel's eternal capital, and opened the American embassy in Jerusalem. I actually got the building built, too.
Back in 2014-15, Trump was saying that maybe we should take away our support of Israel. And so what made him flip so quickly? What made him click? A lot of people are saying what made him flip so quickly was that Sheldon Adelson went and made huge donations to him in his campaign.
They called him a great man.
And they just called him a great man.
Yeah.
And so if you think that Trump was the guy to stop the World War III that's about to happen in the Middle East because Joe Biden is doing exactly what AIPAC wants him to do, exactly what the military-industrial complex wants him to do, and he's being the warmonger of the worst order, and everybody had fingers crossed that Trump would come in and demand a peace and a ceasefire and get the. He's not. So when people ask, like over on other YouTube shows, hey, what's Israel's end game? Israel's end game is to wipe out the Palestinians and take their land. That's why they've been funding Hamas since at least 2006. So that's why in 2019, Benjamin Netanyahu said, if you believe in Israel and you support Israel, you have to fund Hamas. Why do you have to fund Hamas?
To prevent a Palestinian state, he said.
That's right. To prevent how does that prevent a Palestinian state? Because you split the Palestinians, you have the religious right-wingers, hardliners, and you have the secular ones, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and you force them into do a prison break, which is what Hamas did. And then you say that, they're terrorists, so now we can go in and slaughter everybody in Palestine because they're hiding under churches and hospitals and schools. So we got to bomb churches, hospitals, and schools, and we got to slaughter everybody because that's where Hamas is. And meanwhile, they don't tell you, that the Hamas that we've been funding, that we exactly wanted to have be a strong organization so we could then use them as the pretext to go in and wipe out the Palestinians. And that's what's happening. And so a lot of people were hoping that Trump would be the guy to come in and demand peace, just like he said he would do in Ukraine, that he would end the fighting in 24 hours. And that's what everybody wants to. what all sane, rational people want to hear. That's not what the military-industrial complex wants to hear. That's not what the oligarchy wants to hear. That's not what Wall Street wants to hear. That's not what the fossil fuel companies want to hear. But that's not what NATO wants to hear. But that is what everybody else in the world wants to hear. And so we were hoping that Trump would say the same thing about World War III that's happening in the Middle East right now. They're already bombing Syria, and they want to start bombing Iran. And they've said, oh, okay, so if Iran or Iran's proxies attack any of our American troops that we are now sending to Israel, if their proxies attack us, we're going to look at that as a provocation from Iran, and we're going to attack Iran. Yeah. So they've been wanting to attack Iran since at least 2001. And if everybody thought that Trump was going to be the peacemaker, Trump is the rational guy. Trump ran in 2015 and 16. He ran on pulling us out of these stupid wars in the Middle East and investing that money back home. And that's why a lot of people voted for him. A lot of people who were Bernie Sanders supporters, their second choice was Donald Trump. And if you were hoping that, well, now it's over. Now you know that's not real. Yeah. And now some people are saying that, oh, no, Donald Trump is just saying that because it's in front of a bunch of Jewish people and they're his donors. Yeah, well, that's why he moved the embassy, because Sheldon Adelson, even though every president has actually promised that since at least Bill Clinton has promised to move the embassy, they would just not move it, and they would give 6 months extensions. They kept doing that. We're going to hold off for 6 more months. Even Barack Obama said he was going to do that. But Trump actually did do it because Sheldon Adelson gave him that money. And so Trump is just revealing that he doesn't have a real ideology. He's not a real peace candidate. He doesn't have a real ideology. Remember, he knocked off Soleimani, the general of Iran, who was actually helping us fight ISIS and fight Al Qaeda.
But we need them to fight against Assad.
But we were in bed with ISIS and Al Qaeda, the people who attacked us on 9/11. We were funding them. The CIA was funding them in Syria. Why? Because they wanted to put a pipeline through Syria.
John McCain took his picture with him.
That's right.
With ISIS.
And now we're in bed with literal Nazis in Ukraine. Why? Because we want to stop the pipeline from Russia to Germany. That's why. And we want to bleed Russia and Germany at the same time. We don't want to have to fight against this economic power. We want economic hegemony and imperialism, and that's what the West wants, and that's what they're getting. And so if you thought that Donald Trump was going to be the savior, he was going to be the sane one, just like he said he was in 2016, and he told Jeb Bush that your brother got us into a stupid war, well, here he is. He can't wait to start another stupid war. Mm-hmm. But I thought that he was going to go against the deep state. I thought that Donald Trump's whole thing was, I'm not a warmonger. I'm pushing back against the deep state. Even though he did ramp up the drone war, even higher than Barack Obama, but he didn't start any new wars. Now it looks like he's itching. Well, he can't wait to go start a new war. Yeah. And again, there are these people who run the country, the billionaire class that also own Donald Trump, cared nothing about the United States. They don't care there are no countries. Just like that in that movie Network, there are no countries, there are only companies and the international flow of dollars. And that's what this is all about. You tell me why it took 6 hours for the IDF to respond to a bunch of guys in flip-flops and hang gliders. You tell me. You tell me why they ignored the strong warnings from Egypt and the United States. Why do you think they did that? Why do you think they funded Hamas since 2006? What do you think, as Breaking Points is baffled by, what is the end game of Israel? The end game of Israel is to wipe out the Palestinians and take that land.